15 months ago, following Starfield's first major reveal in May of 2022, I released a video full of theories I had made after watching it. From how Todd Howard's mic drop of 1000 planets may work, to predictions about quest design and gameplay. In that video, I announced,
we can then go back to this video after the game is released to see where I was right and where I was most likely wrong.
Well, the time has come. How wrong was I? Not as much as I thought. Or hoped.
Jwlar.
Procedural Generation. In that Starfield reveal, we weren't yet told that Procedural Generation would be used. With the announcement of 100 star systems and 1000 planets, it was all but confirmed.
Procedural generation will be a cornerstone of Starfield world design. First thing to consider is just how big are these planets going to be. I highly doubt we'll be able to access every corner of them like in No Man's Sky.
Not only did I correctly predict that the planets would use procedural generation, but that you would not be able to seamlessly explore them as in No Man's Sky. I instead theorized that with the landings and takeoff being a set animation, we would be given multiple large areas of land to explore. How large did I think these pieces of land would be?
If I was to throw out a ballpark size based on nothing but conjecture and my limited knowledge of the creation engine, I believe each planet will range somewhere between the size of the Shivering Isles in Oblivion, Solve Simon Skyrim, and on the larger side, Vardenfell from Morrowind.
I thought that was huge at the time, but I was selling them short. Each tile is actually closer to the size of the entirety of Cyrodiil province, taking the player over 21 minutes to run from one side to the other and measuring an estimated 64 square kilometers or 24.7 square miles. I also predicted that there would be some handmade planets, estimating between 5 to 100 of them. This was wrong. There are handmade locations, such as the capital cities and all of the explorable points of interest that are plonked on the planets at random, but from what I can tell, not a lot to any of the landscapes have been handmade. Perhaps some of the outskirts of the cities were hand-edited a little bit, yet with how similar they are to other locations on the same planet, I don't feel confident in that statement. I assumed that the proc-gen planets would look closer to Daggerfall Unity, with an endless sprawl of hills to walk over, which is more or less right. The planets do vary, with mountains, forests and other biomes, and of course the proc-gen algorithm is 25 years ahead of Daggerfall, with the landscape looking more believable as a result. I mentioned that there would be explorable areas on the planets placed at logical distances from each other, and that there would be 10 to 20 different variations of each type of area. For example, 10 different kinds of caves, 15 kinds of outposts, and so on. While we are yet to discover the exact amount of variations per location type, seeing as in the time I have been playing Starfield I have already come across duplicates, it doesn't appear to be that many variations at all. At one point I discovered the exact same cave interior on the moon and then on Earth in just 30 minutes of gameplay. Who knows, perhaps I just got unlucky. Still, at the moment I think my predicted number seems accurate, if not a little too high. I talked about friendly outposts that would fulfill the role of small towns in Daggerfall, offering a place to trade and to run Radiant Quest errands for some money. Lo and behold, that's right again, such as this mining operation on Earth's moon. There were a bunch of friendly NPCs, I could trade some goods and grab a lazy Radiant Quest, asking me to mine some resources and bring it back. 25 years in the making indeed. This is at times very much Daggerfall in space. From a gameplay standpoint, I theorized that most planets would fulfill the role of dungeons in the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, where the planets aren't necessarily about exploring the surface, but instead about combat, looting and farming experience. And that is their role. I just didn't correctly predict that a lot of the gameplay would instead focus around mining and scanning instead of just combat.
Going back to those handmade planets, these are probably where the bulk of the game will take place, and where the majority of players will spend their time. These will be like the Whiterun province of Skyrim. There's so much more to the game, but for whatever reason, the majority always talk about this one area.
I had a whole section on what I thought the handmade worlds could be like, which again appears to be wrong. It's hard to confirm whether any of these landscape locations were handmade, and if they were, the proc-gen algorithm is good enough to make that not obvious. All the handmade landscapes are so generic that you cannot tell when compared to a machine-made location. Pick your poison between those two, I guess. I did, however, say that the main quest would focus on taking the player between handmade locations that had greater focus than other places, which is an obvious prediction, I know, and is the case. You will spend a lot of the main quest visiting the most interesting towns, cities, and space stations as you work alongside Constellation. Quests and Immersion. For the quests outside of the main quest and factions that everyone expected, I predicted that there would be loads of Radiant quests designed in a way to not seem radiant.
I really believe that they are going to be pushing Radiant quests hard. I'm hoping to see some more influence from Daggerfall, where we can have not just a greater variety in quest type, but most importantly, better writing associated with why the player is doing them.
This isn't the case though. Radiant quests exist for sure, but they're not hidden in any way. The game knows it's giving you a basic activity that exists to farm XP and credits, and it doesn't try to hide it under loads of voice lines or world building. Instead, Bethesda thankfully focused on more interesting side quests. They aren't all amazing, some involve getting a lady her favourite brand of coffee, but others are solar system sprawling epics that even have some choices to be made.
We'll probably see more random NPCs this time around too. If done right, with enough unique looks and random names, they will hopefully be able to bulk out the towns and outposts with enough people to be both believable from a population standpoint and satisfying from the talk to anyone approach that Bethesda has had since Arena.
I expected the cities to be filled with a lot more random NPCs to give them life, which they did, depending on your graphical settings. These are the most bustling cities we have ever seen in a Gamebryo-based Bethesda game, although I also believe they would give them randomized names to help make them feel a bit more real than simply a generic citizen, which isn't the case. I knew that you wouldn't be able to talk to them all, but instead they would give a few repeatable lines by interacting with them, and this is where Bethesda surprised me. I underestimated how much voice work and voice actors would be used. You won't often hear the same voice actor twice, and it's rare to hear the same voice line twice, except with NPCs you interact with often, like shopkeepers. For the gameplay, we didn't know a whole lot at that time. We had seen the backgrounds, and I mentioned that I wasn't sure how much they would affect gameplay, and it isn't a whole lot. They change your starting skills, but you can easily unlock more as you level, so this only has an early game effect. From a role-playing stance, I do like that the player has a specific background they can refer to when considering their options and style of play. There are even times where your background is brought up in dialogue, although it isn't as often as I would like.
I was a soldier, that's enough, right, to become a police officer in most countries, so, surely I should be able to say, I'm a soldier. I've got training. I've got military training. Instead you gotta say this, I guess.
I incorrectly thought that the trait system would be closer to the advantages and disadvantages system from Daggerfall. While the traits do come with some drawbacks, none of them are as drastic as I had theorized. They can usually be overcome in game 2, instead of being a playthrough long hindrance you must always navigate. When it comes to space, we already knew we wouldn't be able to control takeoff and landing, so I made the simple prediction that some kind of hyperdrive system would act as fast travel. I did, however, incorrectly think that we wouldn't be able to control where we landed, and that each planet would have a few select landing locations to choose from. Instead, you are free to pick wherever you like. It doesn't really have an impact on the gameplay experience of the exploration, past finding certain resources, but it's nice to have the freedom of choice at least. I thought space was going to fulfill the role of the dragon attack / random encounter section of a standard modern Bethesda game, which is the case. I even foresaw what these encounters would be, from pirate attacks, friendly merchant vessels, and a ship in distress. I'm not Nostradamus, I've just played the same space games that the designers at Bethesda had. We had already seen a glimpse of the leveling system, where it looked similar to Fallout 4 with experience points and a skill tree, and that is true in Starfield. I wanted there to be some kind of advantage and disadvantage system here though, where taking a perk in one tree may have had a negative effect in another area. Yeah, that was hopeful thinking. Instead, the perks are as simple as you may think, boiling down to unlocking abilities and incrementally getting better at others. For the companions, I correctly predicted that your crew could be filled with handwritten companions linked to quests, and a variety of less important NPCs that could man your ship as crew members. This is basically the system in Fallout 4 with outposts, so it was to be expected.
I expect to have some generic ones to pad out your crew as well, like randomly generated mercenaries you can hire from a tavern or a spaceport.
I can say I was surprised to see that I was right in saying that the random mercenary type crew members could be hired from taverns. It is the most evident design choice when I think about it, so maybe I'm just surprised that Bethesda was so on the nose with it. For the gunplay, I lamented how similar it looked to Fallout 4's shooting, which I wasn't a fan of, but I can say in Starfield it is slightly better. The movement controls feel a lot tighter to me, dependent on the gravity of course, and the boost pack really helps the fighting to be more fast paced. Mostly then, it seems I was right in my predictions. Unfortunately, that is only because Bethesda's game design philosophy has become quite stagnant, and what changes they did make in Starfield were generic for the space genre. The prediction I am most sad to see was wrong is the lack of any prominent handmade landscapes to explore. Skyrim's wilderness was designed in a way to navigate the player. Its use of mountain terrain, cobbled roads, dirt paths, and grand vistas displaying new biomes for the player to venture into was some of the highlights of Bethesda's world design, an area they have excelled in since Morrowind, which managed to capture a sense of wonderment through its exploration despite being unable to see 20 feet in front of you.
While I champion Daggerfall, I don't want Bethesda to fully flip 180 degrees back to that style of barren wilderness, so I hope I'm right with my prediction for the handmade planets.
When it comes to exploring these planets, when you are not heading towards a place of interest, that's sadly how it is. They can be beautiful, strikingly so at times, but they don't meander you down the path of the designer's choosing, they just exist. I am creating a collaborative multi-episode retrospective for Starfield that will be launching over the coming months with fellow long-form content creator Evan Prince. You can check out his channel using the link on screen and in the description. We will be critiquing and analysing the game through a thorough magnifying glass as we discover where Starfield shines and where it doesn't. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one.